Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And today I will be reviewing the movie If Beale Street Could Talk. Now I know that this movie has been out for about a month. I think it came out in limited release around Christmas time and then it spread out. So I finally got a chance to go see it. An adaptation of James Baldwin's novel by the same name. So the first thing I noticed when I walked up is that they do not have a sign for If Beale Street Could Talk. Because I was going to take a picture in front of the sign so that I could use it as my thumbnail for this video. But I'm going to walk down it's a long walkway in front of the movie theater. But along the walkway, they have the playbills for all of the movies that they're showing, and you guys will notice that there is not one for If Beale Street Can Talk. However, If Beale Street Can Talk is actually one of the featured movies here. So I have about 5 minutes before the movie starts, and I'm sure they have one on the inside, but this outside placement is actually marketing for people. Oh, and let me zoom in on this one because this is actually a longtime friend of mine. His name is Cranston Cumberbunch. He's an upcoming actor and movie producer here in St. Petersburg. And this, I believe, is his second film. And we have what's called the Sunshine Film Festival going on in St. Petersburg. And he is featured in the film festival for his new movie called Agent X, the movie. And so we're going to keep walking down here so you guys can see that there is no playbill for If Beale Street Could Talk, which is a featured movie here. And I believe this is a 20-screen movie theater. Okay? So we're going to go inside and see if there's actually a playbill inside. Is Beale Street Can Talk playing here?
Yeah, 140.
Okay. How come you guys don't have a billboard outside?
Is that?
Why don't you have a billboard outside? One of
Oh,
the
like a
playbills.
marquee?
Yeah.
We used to back in the day, but
No, I mean like how you have the posters going along the walkway. There's not one for.
there's not one for Beale Street?
No.
It might be on the other side.
Yeah, walk the whole length.
Oh, sure.
I was about to turn around and then I said, okay, let me go inside because I'm sure it said it was playing here. Hey guys, I just got out of the movie If Beale Street Could Talk, and I'm going to take a moment to take all of this in, to reflect over what I just spent the last 2+ hours watching, pull my notes and my thoughts together, and I'll be back with a full review. See you in a little bit. I haven't read the book before, but I think I'm going to buck my rule because I have a rule that if I read the book, I don't like going to see the movie because I'm always disappointed. And if I go see the movie, I don't read the book. But I think I am going to go back and read this book because there were some points where I could kind of tell that there might have been some changes, and I'll get to one of those changes later in this review. But it's a short book. I think it's less than 200 pages long. So my positives about the movie was that I think that the cast was phenomenal. I mean, just looking at all that beautiful brown skin on the screen at the movie theater just made my heart fill with joy. I mean, the acting was phenomenal. Regina King, my gosh, she is so amazing. And I'm watching that movie like Regina King need to be everybody's mama, like the perfect person to play like a mother on movies, TV shows. I loved her in the show American. What was was the name of that movie? American Crime. It was like each season they would do like 8 or 10 episodes dealing with the issue that's going on in America. That was an awesome show, but it ended up getting canceled because y'all didn't want to watch it. But it was so realistic, so well written, so well acted. And Regina King was one of the cast members on that show. But she's just such an amazing actress altogether. The soundtrack was awesome, you know, because it was set, I think, like in the 60s or whatever. And so when the show started, James Baldwin is speaking and he gives this line. And then there was also another, like a prologue to the movie, and I was trying to find it online, but I couldn't find it, so I don't know if it was something that was added just for the movie or if it was from one of his other books. But basically, it was saying that Beale Street could be any street in America, or every city in America has a Beale Street. And it's basically Beale Street is, you know, the heartache of the black community. It's the story of being black in America. And like I said, I looked for it everywhere and I couldn't find that quote because it was so powerful and I wanted to share it with you guys. Then I was disappointed, as you can see in the little clip I showed at the beginning, that they didn't have the poster outside the movie theater advertising Beale Street. However, when I got inside, I was really, really surprised for several reasons. One, the movie theater that I saw this movie at is in downtown St. Pete, and it has like some history. That whole little plaza has some history. So a lot of black people don't like to go to the movies there. They would prefer to go out to the mall or out to the shopping center in Pinellas Park to go to the movies. So I'm thinking, okay, this movie's been out a month. I'm going to go in here and see the movie, and I'll probably be the only person sitting in the movie. But to my surprise, when I got in there were probably about 50 people, maybe not 50, maybe 30 to 40 people were in the movie theater, and they were all white people. And there was myself and one other young lady who were black. We were the only two black people in there. And so I thought that was a good thing. So the fact that there were people in the theater and the movie's been out a month, I thought was awesome. And the fact that it was a predominantly white audience, I thought was good because they're supporting a movie about black people that was done by black people. And, you know, it's so late in the game and they're still going to check it out. I made some notes and I cannot read my handwriting, but we are going to make the best of this review. So, the movie itself, it's a love story. It's about black love. I didn't really know what to expect, like I said, because I haven't read the book, but I was pleasantly surprised. And it's the story of Tish and Alfonso, but they call him Fonny in the movie. And so it opens up, and well, actually, throughout the whole movie, like the cinematography is so on point. And I already said the soundtrack was really good, and it just like moved you through the movie. And so the way the movie was set up is like Tish is telling the story, is telling their love story. And so she's kind of like moving it along. And so we learned that her and Fonny met. I don't know if they were neighbors or not, but they have known each other since they were little kids. And then she's talking about how they used to take a bath together and that type of stuff. And so now they're adults. And when the movie first opens up, it's the two of them together and they're standing like on this plaza or something. And you can't really tell what's going on, but then they talk and they break away. And then once they break away, we find out that Fonny is actually incarcerated. So then we get the backstory to, you know, what led up to this. And so she's talking about, you know, when they were little kids and they used to play in the bathtub and how she first realized that he loved her was when he made the sculpture and he gave the sculpture to her mother as a gift. And so that's when she knew that the dynamics of their relationship had changed from being just best friends to he wanted something more from her. And so it's sort of like you know, the brother fall on hard times. No matter how hard he tries, you know, things never work out for him. And then he has this sister on his side that, you know, is going to stand by his side, that's determined, you know, that her love is enough to get them both through what they need to, you know, to get to where they need to be. And she's going to stand by his side no matter what. And the movie was really giving me a lot of, oh my God, I know I'd be driving y'all crazy. I be having this stuff written down, and then, or either I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this analogy in the video, and then I can't remember. But do you guys remember that movie? And you know, when I go back to do this, I'll put it in the bylines. But it had Amari Hardwick, and he went to prison, and he had the girlfriend, and it came on BET. But I'll get the, it's like Nowhere is a Place or something like that. Well, anyway, it was giving me that vibe, and then it was also giving me the book with Tayari Jones's book, An American Marriage, that came out, and I actually reviewed that book on a YouTube video, so you guys check that out. Where, you know, a woman's love is really tested when her man goes to prison and she has to hold it down. So it was giving me all that kind of vibe. So I don't know if their inspiration for that movie and for that book derived from this story or not, but there were a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities. Fonny is in jail. Tish goes to visit him in prison. So remember I said they were like standing out on this street, and then they're standing there together, and then they kind of part, and we don't really know what is coming of that. Then we have this scene where she goes to visit him and he's in prison, and we're like, oh my God, like why is he in jail? Then she's back home and she has to tell her mother, and she's basically like, there's something I need to tell you. And then it like breaks away, and now it's dinner time, and it's the mother, who is Regina King, and then the father, and there's a sister. And so Regina King, she goes and she takes out the good wine, and she tells the sister to get the good glasses because they're getting ready to toast. And so they pour the wine, and then when the father gets to the fourth glass, which is going to be Tish's glass, she says to him, okay, just put a little bit in there for Tish, you know. So he's trying to figure out what's going on. So Tish breaks the news that she is with child. So we kind of, they were happy for her, which I was surprised. And, you know, her family was celebrating, but then the father was like, well, he wanted to tell Fonny's dad. And then the sister said, well, I want to tell the sister. So they decided to invite Fonny's family over so that they could break this news to them. And child, when I tell y'all, they were not happy. Well, the father was happy. Fonny's father, he was okay with it. He was happy, you know, he was going to have a grandchild. But them holier than thou sisters and that holier than thou mama, oh my God, they were like out of control. I think they even called the baby a bastard at one time. And then Regina King was like, well, you do realize that this is your grandson. And, you know, they were just basically talking to Tish like she was nothing. Like, I was just sitting there like, okay, like, is this how people really act? And child, by the time that night ended, the father had to knock the mama in the jaw. She said something. He just like hauled off and hit her. She fell down. Oh my God, it was a mess. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a trip. So we basically find out that Fonny was accused of rape. And so that's what he's awaiting trial. They've hired this lawyer that the sister knew, and he's a young Jewish lawyer. So of course there's an issue about money, because remember, this is like in the 60s or 70s, and you know, they don't have good jobs. You're still dealing with racism and segregation and all this stuff. So, well, not segregation, but you know, white people still aren't as accepting of black people at this point in juncture. And so now they need to come up with this money on how they're going to pay for the lawyer. He gets a job working at a department store selling perfume. And then there was this huge, I thought this part of the story where she was talking about the perfume and how, you know, when they work at the perfume counter and they spray the perfume on the back of their hand and then the people sniff it. And so she gives this analogy about how the black men, so they have this black girl there and she's using this perfume. You know, the white women come along and they sniff her hand and either buy the perfume or not. Then she talks about how the black men, like some of the black men come in and they won't even give her the time of day. They looking at her, you know, like, you know, she behind that counter, you know, with this perfume, and like they pity her. And then the other type of black man will come in, and instead of sniffing the back of her hand, he wants her to spray the perfume on him. And then he like sniffs the perfume off of his hand, but you know, won't do it for her. And then she talks about how the white men come in and they, you know, she sprays the perfume on the back of her hand. They'll take her hand, like caress her hand. They'll, you know, put it to their nose, smell it, let it linger for a while, then kind of like lay her hand back down. And so I just thought that was, I don't know why that was so intriguing to me, how she could point out those the differences in how, you know, different genders and races, you know, handled the whole perfume thing, and how it was so telling about just life in general and how people perceive things and stereotypes. And so that was, I thought that was really good. And so we get bits and pieces of how the night unfolds. And like there's a lot of back and forth in the movie. So then we go to, I guess Fonnie had left or something, and he comes back and he has his own place. And so now we get the whole, you know, the developing of the story about the relationship. And I thought it was interesting that, so in the beginning, we could see the love and the happiness and the anticipation on Tish's face. But then as the movie progresses, we can see that anticipation and that joy leaving her face. And now it sort of turns into like a burden and the agony and like, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? And so her and Fonnie, they're walking, and they're walking through the park. And so he's telling her that there have been nights that he slept on the bench at the park. And she's looking at him like, well, why would you sleep on the park bench? And he was saying how, you know, he didn't want to be a burden. Sometimes he didn't want to go back home. Sometimes he didn't want to deal with his mother and everything. But then he lets her know that he's found a place. So they end up going to this apartment, you know, where he's kind of like, do you want to go see it, or do you want to stay here? Do you want to go get something to eat? And so they end up going to the apartment, and oh my God, the apartment was a dump, okay? So I couldn't tell if it was like a storage room that somebody had allowed him to convert into this apartment. He had a table and some chairs from where he worked on his sculptures and everything. But I think he only had like a mattress on the floor. The bathtub was in the middle of the floor. It was like one of those claw tub bathtubs. There was like a little wall separating the kitchen, but the kitchen was big enough to hold probably like a refrigerator and a counter and a hot plate or something. And so she goes in and she's kind of like looking around. And I'm thinking, like, if that had been me, I probably would have left. But she stayed. And then they just have like this language between them without ever really speaking. And so he stopped. I think she zipped down, they kissed, and she zipped down her top. And so she got undressed. And then he started undressing, and then she got down on the mattress, and he gave her this blanket, you know, to cover her nakedness with. And so I'm just sitting there like, okay, what's going on here? You know, so then he goes and he puts some music on, and he turns the lights down. So then they have sex, you know, they make love. And we find out that, I guess it was her first time. And so, you know, he asked her, you know, to tell him, you know, did she enjoy it? And she was like, well, why are you going to make me say this? And he's like, well, I want to hear you say it. And so, you know, it was real sweet, real romantic and everything. But I was sitting there like, probably why I'm single. Okay, because I've been like, I ain't fixing to get down on that mattress. But you know, over time she does turn the apartment into a home, but then they have aspirations about, you know, getting a better place. And so then we have this scene where he takes her to this warehouse. And so it's this Jewish guy named Alfie or Lifey. And so he's showing them this warehouse, and there's like, you know, boards and plumbing stuff all over the floor, and it's just like this huge open space. You know, you see those New York warehouses, and they have like the glass wall with the little dirty glass panes and everything. And so the Lifey guy is asking, like, well, did you explain to her the situation, what's going on, what this is all about? And so he was just so full of joy and excitement, you know, that they were going to move out of his little dump and they want to have this big place that they could do. And so he's using his imagination to get Tish to understand and to visualize what this space is going to look like once they make it their home. And then the guy is looking like, what in the world? And then he says, okay, well, you know, she need a refrigerator. And so he was like, come help me bring the refrigerator in. And he's telling Tish, you know, pretend like you opening the door and stuff. And so I was like, you know, that this is just some real true love. Like, you really, really, really got to love a brother to be imagining that this big warehouse is some, you know, apartment that y'all done converted, and neither one of y'all got no money for real, but y'all gonna be able to turn this flat into this, well, turn this warehouse into like some flats, because he was saying that he could see that there would be multiple units and all of this stuff. And so this is pretty much the beginning of the end, and it's going through their day. And so they leave there and they go to get something to eat. Well, they were going to get something to cook for dinner. And so they're at this little, you know, like corner store. And so this guy comes in, this white guy comes in, and he's trying to hit on Tish, but Fonnie is outside. And so he comes in, sees what's going on. Then he jumps on the guy, and then Tish is like trying to break him up, and they end up outside. He throws the guy on these boxes, and then this police officer comes. So instead of the police, and the guy jumps up and runs off after Tish says, oh, he attacked me in the store. And so the white guy wants to arrest Fonnie for assault. And so then the owner of the store comes out, and she takes up for him and like, you're not arresting him, he didn't do anything wrong. And so the cop is just like really angry, you know, that he can't arrest him. And so we later find out that when he's arrested for the rape, that this cop is the one that said that it was him that did the rape. And he, during the first altercation at the store, Fonnie tells him where he lives. And so I guess the cop remembered that, because then when the lady says that she was raped, then he says that he traced him or chased him to this apartment, which is where he lives, and, you know, made the ID. And then they end up telling the Puerto Rican lady who was raped that, you know, the guy in the lineup, you know, that's the one telling that, you know, he's the one that raped you. Then we go back like earlier, where a friend of Fonnie's, so when we were talking to when they went to see the lawyer tells them, okay, let me back up, I'm getting ahead of myself, because remember I said they kept going back and forth. So there was a scene where later on, you know, the family has gotten over the fact that, you know, she's pregnant and she's having this baby. And so we find out that nobody has gone to the lawyer. So they found the lawyer, you know, the sister got him the lawyer, but then his parents need to go meet with the lawyer to work everything out. And we find out that they haven't gone to the lawyer, and this is what's delaying everything. And so then Tish's dad gets with Fonnie's dad, and then they come up with a plan on how they're going to get the money to pay the lawyer, which was working down in the warehouse district, or the clothing district. So they were stealing the clothes off the dock and then going and selling them on the street to come up with this money. Okay, so And one of the visits with the lawyer tells them that the guy who has the alibi for Fonnie is this guy named Daniel, and that the police have arrested Daniel, and that he has all these prior convictions, and that they're basically going to get him to flip on Fonnie and say that, he wasn't with Fonnie, Fonnie raped the lady and everything. So then fast forward, we find out that Daniel is actually a friend of Fonnie's, and he's just gotten out of jail, and so he was arrested. They stopped him, I think he said for speeding, but he really had marijuana in his pocket. And so he ended up pleading guilty to the speeding because that was less time than if they had charged him for the marijuana. And he's saying, but basically, he wasn't speeding because he don't even know how to drive. So how was they going to accuse him of this? So then we have this scene where him and Fonnie were like sitting at the table. He had invited him back to the apartment. And they're sitting at the table, and Tish, she's cooking dinner and everything. And so he's basically telling Fonnie the story about him getting arrested, what it was like being in jail, how horrible it was, how hard it was, how basically they trick people into pleading guilty. They won't give you bail, they keep delaying your trial, and they just do all these things to you that eventually you just agree to whatever they said. And so now we're like, okay, so we know that Daniel ends up getting arrested again because they're holding this thing over him about the marijuana that they didn't charge him for the last time. And so now he ain't gonna help Fonnie get out of jail. So now they got to come up with another plan. So that's when Regina King ends up going to Puerto Rico, finding the lady. So the lady finally agrees to talk to her, and they get to talking, and she basically is telling her, like, I believe you were raped, but he didn't rape you, and we need you to come back to America. And so the lady ends up freaking out and breaking down and crying, and then she disappears again. So now they're just like, oh my God, this saga is never going to end. Throughout her pregnancy, Tish, it was like a really hard pregnancy. The baby would kick, and she would just like drop whatever was in her hand. She knocked over the coffee pot. She was at work one day, and the baby would kick, and she would like grab hold to the counter. And so I was like, oh my God, this is just like a horrible, horrible pregnancy for this girl. And so then they have a scene towards the end where she comes in, and she's still living at this little rinky-dink apartment, but she done cleaned it up and kind of made it livable. And so she sits down, and she's like holding on to her stomach. And then in the very next scene, she's in that bathtub, and she's giving birth to the baby in the bathtub, and Regina King delivered the baby. And I was like, oh my God, this is just so weird. So at this point, the movie just seemed to have been going on too dang on long. And actually, the other black lady that was in the theater, she had then got up and left at this point. So I'm just like, how is they gonna wrap this up? Like, is he ever gonna get out of jail? What's going on? And then we had this scene where she went to, actually this was before she had the baby. She went to visit him at the hospital. She went to visit him in prison, and the baby kicked, and she like scrunched up like this, and he called for the guard and everything. And it was just something about, like, I done had 3 kids, and I ain't never had my kids kicked to the point where I was in so much pain, and it was causing all this anxiety. And remember I said, like, throughout the movie, you could just see her joy leaving her, and just the burden of loving him and holding on and wanting to be there for him. So then she goes to see him again, and so that we had seen him in prison that night, and I think he was having like a nightmare or something. But then the next day she goes to visit him, and it looks like he's been in a fight, and his hands are all cut up. His eye was bloodshot. He had scratches on his face, but they never say anything about him being in a fight. And so I was sitting there like, okay, this is just so weird. And then this one we get to the point where we have this long span of just nothingness in the movie, and I'm like, oh my God, they need to wrap this up, because I'm pulling out my phone to check the time, and it's going on 2 hours. I'm just like, how is this movie gonna come to the end? And I'm thinking like, dang, is he gonna die? Is he gonna commit suicide? Like, what is going on? And so he doesn't commit suicide, and basically the movie ends with her going to visit him, and the baby, which is a little boy, is like 6 or 7 years old. And we find out that he ended up, after they couldn't find the lady, and it was obvious that they were going to get Daniel, to say that they weren't together. He decided to go ahead and take a plea. We have no clue how much time he got, but we know he done been there about 7 years, because the little boy is talking and drawing and, has very good sense. So I was like, oh my gosh, I like really hated the ending of the movie. But then after I got to thinking about it, I was like, you know what? It was realistic. Because I've told you guys the story about my 2 oldest daughters. Their father is in prison, so I got to thinking about that, and it's really like a decision. Like, do you do the time with the person, or do you go on with your life? But basically, people go to jail every day, and you just live to deal with it. You live to accept it. And and in her case, she loved him so much that she decided to accept it, and that he was the man for her, and whether they had to be in prison, he was going to be in prison or not, it didn't matter. And I don't know if I've shared this story with you guys about the day we were arguing on Facebook about whether or not you should support people who have gone to jail. And so we got into this heated debate. It was multiple people on this post. And the lady inboxed me and said that her husband had been in prison, all these years, but he was her husband and she had stayed with him. And her kids are basically grown up, spending every weekend at the jail, with their father. And I was like, Lord Jesus, I couldn't do all that. But so I got it at the end, but I just think that it drug out too long. And I checked, and they said the movie was 1 hour and 59 minutes, but I swear I was at that movie theater for about 2.5 hours, so I'm not sure. But this is the reason I went back and started checking out the book. And then it kind of like brought everything together, because in the book, Fonnie's dad commits suicide. And so the whole thing with the troubling pregnancy and the kicking of the baby, and I think that maybe the suicide coincides with when she was having the baby. But that's what that was all about. So it all made more sense to me at that point. If I had to give it on a scale of 5 stars, I would give it 4.5 stars. They lose 1/2 star, like I said, because I thought the movie was entirely too long. I thought that the ending could have been stronger, but like I said, the ending kind of just makes you think that life is what life is. You make it the best that you can be. And so, but it was just that stretch. It was that stretch of time where I was like, child, they could have cut this out. They could have cut this stretch and just brought this in and saved us like 5 or 10 minutes. And so the story just seemed to have gotten to a point where they just didn't know what to do with the story, in my opinion. But other than that, excellent movie. If you get an opportunity to go see it, go see it. That's it for me. 4.5 stars, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave your comments below. Rate the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.